Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Comic Book Cove. I'm Tom Morris.
And I'm Josh Holderbaum.
And this week we are discussing some titles that are coming to an end in their storylines, some titles that are just starting some storylines, and frankly, some titles that they're not really grabbing us. What more can we say about than that?
Yeah. We can't be into everything. We're into a lot of different stuff.
Yes, that's true.
And it's hard to find comics that we're not into. And some of these, we're just not into.
Yeah, a couple issues so far has not really been grabbing us the way that other titles are, but we'll still discuss them because even though we might not like them, might not prefer them, you as an audience might enjoy them, and we'd like to hear different points of view. So this week we're going to review and discuss the following titles: Suicide Squad #1, Harley Quinn #2, Batgirl and the Birds of Prey #1, Green Arrow #5, Nightwing #3, and Batman #5. And as always, spoilers ahead. We're going to start off this week with Suicide Squad #1, The Black Vault Part 1, I Wanna Be Sedated. And I'm going to be honest with you, after reading, there's two stories in this. I felt I should have been sedated when I read it.
Yeah, it's sort of a funny title that I saw, didn't really think about it till you just said it now. Yeah, I mean, the first story, the full Suicide Squad story, is very movie influenced.
Very much.
I mean, it's with the exception of a few plot points, it's essentially an adaptation of the film.
Yeah.
Sort of. I mean, it's the same characterizations, largely the same lineup, minus Diablo.
Yes.
And Slipknot, unfortunately. So Slipknot's not there to get his head blown off, unfortunately.
So what do you think, if they're going to go forward with tying in this lineup with the movie, is it a good or a bad thing?
I expected them to do that, but I did expect them to take maybe a few more liberties with the plot than they did with this, which, I mean, the difference being that they're going up into space. I mean, they're heading eventually to somewhere in Russia to find some sort of cosmic artifact.
They call it a game changer.
Yeah. And so it's still very different than the movie, but the characterizations are basically the same.
Yes,
I mean,
they are.
The Enchantress, June Moon, is almost babbling on about how much she doesn't want to be the Enchantress. And,
yes.
Rick Flag has the same, they're alluding to kind of the same relationship with her, and Katana is Rick Flag's second in command. And it reeked too much of almost movie adaptation to me.
It did. At the very beginning, when we see Amanda Waller is being flown to, what do they call it, Hell?
Yeah.
They had a name for it down in Louisiana.
Yeah, Belle Reve.
Yep.
Yep.
And then they grab everyone out of their cells. They're in individual containers. Everything kind of it did feel movie-ish, and it just felt like it didn't grab me. I'm going to be honest with you, this issue didn't grab me. They go up in space, a little foreshadowing when Killer Croc says anything but space.
Yeah.
So they go suborbital to get to Russia, and that's when Killer Croc starts to throw up into his helmet. When he starts throwing up, that makes Rick Flag, so he won't drown in his helmet, in his puke, he takes off the helmet, but that creates some issues when they go down descent that unbalances the ship. So Rick Flag has to call out the Enchantress, telling the girl, we need the Enchantress. Finally, she is able to come out, and she creates some type of hole for them to fall through the ice. But where does the team go from here?
Yeah, it's kind of an underwhelming start.
Yeah, it was.
I mean, it's a decent comic. It does, but I think the movie did that plot better. I mean, it gave a lot more detail. I mean, I enjoyed Killer Croc at least having some lines. I enjoyed the anything but space line. It does help to humanize him a bit. I was a little confused that he'd be choking on his own vomit with a guy who can, breathe underwater.
Right.
But he can't breathe vomit, I guess.
No.
Which is kind of weird.
And then
but-
Captain Boomerang was excited that they got the footy on their little television, their little monitors and screens, but then he had issues up in space. And I guess even in space there's Pokemon, because Harley Quinn was able to capture a Spacey-mon.
Not a Pokemon, a Pokecutie.
A Pokecutie.
Yeah, because apparently there are not Pokemon in that universe, but in the Green Lanterns comic, Jessica Cruz has Charizard, and they mentioned several of them by name. And So,
well, the jury's still out for us on this part of Suicide Squad, but I will say this much. The second part of the book, they seem to have the main story, and now they're having a one-shot, and this issue is on Deadshot, so maybe a one-shot of all the characters, individual Suicide Squad members. If they did the whole book like that, I would have enjoyed that book more, because Deadshot's origin, the retelling of Deadshot, was very interesting.
Yeah, I really hope they do one of those with each issue. That would be a really nice tie-in. It would be a nice tie-in to the movie, too, because the movie sort of introduces you to how they all ended up in prison in the first place, and that helps to explain who these characters are. And really, this origin covers a lot from, Deadshot's first appearance, where he was in like a top hat and bow tie and his really weird suit, to more of the, the gun-toting assassin that we know him as later on. And it's a nice combination between that. There's a little bit of the movie origin with him having a daughter, so he's more of a sympathetic character than he was before. It was a really nice redo of his origin.
One thing you said earlier when we were discussing before we went on start videoing was he was more, instead of being homicidal, he was more suicidal.
Yeah, one of the things with sort of pre-Flashpoint Deadshot was he almost had a fixation with fantasizing about killing people. I mean, even people he was just having conversations with, his friends, his acquaintances, his teammates, and that kind of made him homicidal. And now he's in this issue. They mentioned that he has latent suicidal tendencies.
Yes.
Maybe because of what happened with his daughter finding out that he's a professional assassin who murdered a man right in front of her eyes. Who knows? But I mean, it does kind of make sense that at least one person on the Suicide Squad might maybe want to die at some point.
Right. What I liked about this issue, or this story, was that when they were talking about the background, he was hired by Cobra to kill Bruce Wayne for $10 million, and they said, no, you're going to do it for the glory of Cobra because we have your daughter. And he knew that play would not work, because if he did it, if he killed Bruce Wayne for them, then they could keep his daughter and use her as a pawn. So somehow through the dark web, he contacted Batman, and they set up where they used rubber bullets, and Batman said no one dies. But when the Cobra operative threatened, when he brought back Bruce Wayne to be dead, and the Cobra operative saw that he was with Batman, threatened his daughter, he ended up killing that Cobra operative, and that's where he went to prison, where I think he wanted to go in the first place as long as his daughter is safe. So I love that part. That was a great story. I just hope that we have more character development, and then maybe Suicide Squad, these people will start to get closer to these people and relate, or just feel them out. One thing I want to add real quick, we're seeing a lot of Cobra in our titles. We're seeing them in a lot of the Batman titles, in Suicide Squad and in Nightwing, and we saw them in a couple other, I think there's a couple other issues that we've seen them in.
Yeah, they mentioned them in Batman, one of the possibilities for the Monster Men. It was like a Cobra rocket.
So I wonder if going forward we're going to see some more of Cobra as an organization. Not G.I. Joe Cobra.
Yeah, I know.
Cobra with a K.
I'm sitting here fighting that, like, wait, Cobra Commander's going to show up in this?
Yeah.
Like, hey, that's cool. Yeah, I'm curious to see where Suicide Squad goes from here. Because to me, this was sort of like Hellblazer that we read a few-ish episodes ago, where it's an introduction to them.
Yes.
It doesn't really advance the plot anywhere.
Right.
I mean, stuff happens, but you're still just setting up. So I think we'll get more meat and bones as it goes along.
I
agree.
I
really hope we get more of those sort of the backstory the case files. And I will say, in that Deadshot story, when you flip the page and here's Deadshot and Batman wailing on a group of Cobra guys,
Yes.
it's like, whoa, holy crap.
Yep.
That was really, really cool.
It was.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens in the issues ahead. Right now, we're not so sure.
Mm-hmm.
Harley Quinn #2, The Coney Island of the Damned. And go ahead.
Well, the alien hot dog created zombies are still wreaking havoc in New York, and in this we find out that the zombies are surprise, basically emanating from the hot dog stand cart that served the tainted hot dogs, and there's some sort of invisible force field that they can't go past, with the epicenter being this hot dog stand.
Yeah, maybe all the hot dog stands that were delivered these hot dogs, the zombies can't go any farther because maybe there's so much of the zombie essence still there, keeping them there. And maybe that will be the end of the storyline. Let's talk real quick. I didn't like this issue. It was just too goofy for me. Mm-hmm. But let's talk about maybe some of the good points and then get to why this issue didn't grab.
Yeah.
Harley demonstrated some major skills in this.
Yeah, she's a pro. I mean,
Yep.
she does a lot. I mean, she takes out, I don't know how many zombies all by herself.
Right.
She's basically a crack shot with a gun, trying to
Yep.
get the red.
Red
I was about to
tool.
say red. Yeah, I was about to say Red Hood.
Yep.
So much red. You know, shooting out windows in a hospital so that he can be
Yep.
catapulted in without breaking through the windows. Which you'd think at that point, you know, having your arm cut off and
Yes.
being thrown on a catapult into a hospital, a couple broken windows wouldn't hurt. But it's Harley. That's
Right.
That's sort of Harley's. And it does give some. There is some good internal dialogue with Harley,
Yes.
kind of, where she is much more sort of calm and collected in her internal thoughts than she is with
Right.
the, you know, sort of tough talking, New York accented, you know, anti-heroine that we see her as on the outside. So it seems like they are trying to groom her as you know, a major player in the DC universe, if she isn't already.
Right.
I mean, that she has a lot of skills that she could go up against, you know, Batman or whatever.
And maybe that's through the years she's had to acquire these skills. She had to learn, as maybe when she started last issue, they talked about how she had to play a lot of roles, and so hopefully her mind is sharp, very sharp for how she portrays herself. Her hand-to-hand combat, her weapon skills are very good, and she has a lot of charisma to her. And then she's, like Josh said, she's taken out a bunch of zombies. Her and her gang get surrounded, and it looks like there's no hope for them. But what happens? Well, here comes Poison Ivy with the chainsaw, in a way, trying to even out the odds. But the zombies aren't infecting, so you had to eat the tainted hot dogs to be infected. But good for Red Tool that the zombie bites don't cause you to be a zombie. And then Poison Ivy shows up. But we're not digging this. I'd be honest with you, right now, Harley Quinn #1 and #2, not really digging it. Why? It just kind of too much. It just seems goofy.
Yeah.
And I can take goofiness, comic books, I can take it. But maybe let's get a little bit goofier later as it goes. A little bit of humor here and there, but it just threw it right down on the table and almost dares you to, if you don't like me now, you'll not like me later.
Yeah. When you know, as we're doing these episodes, Tom leaves it to me to come up with the discussion points for these, and I always try to make sure, you know, they have kind of roughly the same amount of discussion points. And with this one, it was hard to wring one or two discussion points out of this.
Right.
Because it's a lot of Harley, it's a lot of zombies, it's a lot of, I don't want to say nonsense, but
I think it is.
a lot of, it's so out there. You know, and the only thing I can think of is Deadpool.
Yep.
It's so, I don't know if they're trying to be like Deadpool or just to create this little pocket universe where Harley can just do her weird things and get away with it. But I wish it was a threat that related more to her.
Right.
Because having a, super intelligent, super deadly woman without any real superpowers against an army of zombies from alien infected hot dogs, that doesn't do it for me.
No. Now, maybe as we read through, maybe we'll get a different characterization as her, because she is a complex character. And I remember her from the Batman animated series. I'm dating myself in the 90s, but there was a lot of different layers. That's where she originated from. And maybe that's what I'm clinging to, is I want to see more of her. When she was a sidekick to the Joker, it worked. And then slowly but surely, they gave her more prominent role in the series, and that was a breakout character. We're seeing her right now in the most absurd situation possible, and I'm just thinking, could we have gotten a few more issues into her title before they just said alien infected hot dogs? That's where I'm at with this right now.
Yeah. What I wish they had done was like with the Wonder Woman comics, is with one issue we get what's going on in the present, the other one we get the backstory. Because the previous issue of Harley, she goes through her backstory, and there's some plot details that are kind of different than the classic origin. And I think that would have been a nice origin to explore, and especially for the guys who are kind of dated in the past.
Right.
We're not necessarily up to speed with modern Harley. That would be a nice bone to throw to us.
Right. And it isn't even, her character isn't even in unison with the characterization in the movie. It just, this one, maybe it is, but the situation they've put her in so far is just too outlandish right now.
Yeah, and it's too bad, because I like I like the artwork. I love kind of the concept of her little gang, which is kind of this weird ramshackle band of people who just like Harley Quinn. It just kind of makes me wonder what audience they're aiming for.
Right.
If that's just the diehard Harley fans, or trying to get new fans interested in Harley, because it is very Harley centric.
Yes.
And as popular as Harley is. So it'll be interesting to see where this goes, and I'm more interested to see what happens after this.
Right.
Once we put the zombies.
Yeah, once we get
in the back.
the out there story completed, let's see what happens in the future, because this is a great character with a lot of potential. The story, a lot of people might enjoy, said, hey, this is fun. We don't have to really take and invest, and we can just take a load off and just enjoy the outlandishness. I'm kind of like, we could have had this later. Right now, I thought the whole point of the DC Universe Rebirth was to establish these characters, and maybe she's not really, I don't know, we'll see what happens. That's the best I can say.
Yep.
I don't want to get too critical. At the same time, the story isn't, maybe the series progresses and we'll go in different directions.
Yep, and I'm curious to see how this ties in with Suicide Squad, too.
Yeah, me too.
Because she mentioned she was sort of, she was being monitored in the last one, or something like that. So it looks like she's out of prison at some point, but we don't know if Suicide Squad's before that, or she's going to be incarcerated after that. Who knows? It's Harley.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, this is one I'm curious on, that if you're reading it, please let us know what you think. I'd like to hear some different opinions, if you agree with us. And if we're in the minority on this, hey, that's what we have comic books for, is just to everyone to enjoy. But we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to discuss Batgirl and the Birds of Prey #1 and Green Arrow #5. And we'll be right back.